So let us look at some more adaptations typical of the Arctic species. Warm-blooded animals that persist throughout the Arctic winter have thick coats or fur or feathers that often turn white. The body shapes of high Arctic mammals such as reindeer, caribou, collared lemmings, Arctic hares and Arctic foxes are rounder and their extremites shorter than their temperate counterparts. So this is what is called the Allen rule. And here we will look at what is the Allen rule. So the animals adapted to cold climates have shorter and thicker limbs and bodily appendages than animals adapted to warm climates. So if you look at Lepus arcticus, which lives, this is a type of hare which lives in the Arctic region. This is short and it is like a round one. Whereas if we look at Lapus americanus, which lives in the North America, or Lapus californicus, which lives in California, or Lapus alani, which lives in the Mexico. If you look at these are little bit longer in shape, but they are not round like their Arctic counterparts. So that is what is called the Allen's rule. So the body surface area to volume ratio for homeothermic animals varies with the average temperature of the habitat to which they are adapted. That is, the ratio is low in cold climates and high in hot climates. So this is what is the major thing, because when the surface area is less, they actually can retain their heat for longer time. So that's the reason the Arctic animals have the smaller surface to area volume. And the next one is cold hardiness. So here invertebrates survive low winter temperature in dormancy mainly due to two cold hardiness strategies. One is freeze tolerance and the another one is freeze avoidance. We are going to study about antifreeze protein in the later part of the course, where we will be discussing these two things in more detail. The freeze avoiding animals add specialized molecules, mainly proteins, to their body fluids to promote supercooling and prevent freezing even when the temperature drops below the normal freezing point of their body fluids. Typically, supercooling points are lower in Arctic than in temperate invertebrates. The main adaptations of insects to supercool and avoid freezing include antifreeze proteins. So this is one area where we will be studying elaborately in 2 modules. Cryoprotectants and metabolic arrest. So these are all some of the freeze avoiding adaptations by the Arctic species. Freeze tolerance, which appears to be an energetically less costly strategy than extended supercooling, and this is a common strategy in very cold region. That means freeze tolerance is one of the special adaptations. And insects in the northern hemisphere have mostly adapted freeze avoidance strategies. One is freeze tolerance, another one is freeze avoidance, because in the case of insects, the winter months are longer, colder and more extreme, so they want to avoid the freeze, not tolerate the freeze. So here is an example of the insect is overwintering in a changing climate. So how do they do it? So this scheme is given in the Journal of Experimental Biology. So there are 2 major things we talked about. One is freeze tolerance, another one is freeze avoidance. So what is freeze tolerance? It is the ice nucleating agents initiate extracellular freezing at -5 degree to -10 degree, because we know water freezes at 0 degree. So this is much lower than that temperature. And when we talk about the freeze avoidance, what they do is they remove all the potential nucleating agents which will be leading to ice formation. So what are the type of compounds or the proteins they have? Mainly are polyhydroxyl alcohols and sugars. So we have 2 major types, antifreeze protein and antifreeze glycoproteins. So the glycoproteins have many of the sugar moieties. So the freeze tolerance will have cryoprotected partially frozen tissues, and all of them may have antifreeze proteins. They inhibit secondary recrystallization, that means lower lethal temperature, usually below -40 degree. So the species which has this freeze tolerance, they have low mortality, but the species which try to do the freeze avoidance, they actually escape the winter from the Arctic region most of the time if possible. Otherwise, they will have high mortality because they cannot avoid. So, they escape the freezing. Adaptations of insects to cold conditions. One is the antifreeze protein. These functions by binding to microscopic ice crystals as they start to form, and in doing so prevent crystal from growing any longer. Basically, ice starts from the tiny crystal and it grows to huge, bigger size. So if the small crystals are not allowed to grow, then there will be no buildup of ice in the Arctic species. So that is how they use these antifreeze proteins, and they make sure even if a small tiny icy crystal is formed, it will never be permitted to grow into larger one. So that is how they save themselves. The second one is cryoprotectants. Here, high concentration of polyols, mainly glycerols or sorbitols, and sugars are synthesized to push the supercooling point of the body fluids to low levels, because when you have these compounds, then the body liquids concentration actually decreases. So the freezing point of water decreases in proportion to the concentration of the polyols. Glycerol is highly soluble in water and is also non-toxic to metabolism and can easily be synthesized by insects. So these are called cryoprotectants. Then metabolic arrest and ischemia tolerance. Many insects use strong metabolic rate depression, that is, these are mainly induced by hormones in response to change in the photoperiod and the thermoperiod. So when there is a change in the temperature or when there is a reduction in the solar radiation, then these kind of processes are initiated. So some hormones are secreted and they make sure this metabolic arrest or the metabolism rate is reduced. This will lower their energy needs during the winter month because they cannot go out and hunt or they cannot go out and eat food outside. So that's the reason this metabolic arrest keeps them alive for longer time. Last generation produced in the late summer or autumn enters a state of diapause, that is arrested development, that is sustained for several months until spring comes. So this is how they survive in the cold winters of Arctic. So what are the implications observed? One is increasing temperature cause earlier onset, longer duration and increased plant growth, and changes in diversity, abundance, composition and structure of vegetation. So these are all the positive things or neutral things we can say. And high Arctic breeding waders may lose much of their current breeding areas, potentially changing species interactions and migration patterns. So when the plants are there plenty, the species can survive there without much of a problem. Higher spring temperature and less snow cover increase the nesting success for many geese. So this is a highly positive one. If there is less ice, then they can survive very easily. Increasing temperature influence development, distribution and emergence of some caribou, reindeer and musk oxen pathogens that may negatively impact the health. So in one way the higher temperature is beneficial for geese, but the other way the higher temperature leads to increase of pathogen which affects some of the species present there. So temperature has both positive and negative effect.